What is good, Nio family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Nio stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down what's happening to the overall market and how this may affect Nio, and then kind of like bring back something I mentioned in my previous videos about how Wyckoff is very relevant to Nio in my opinion, and what this really tells us about the future for this stock. Now, before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Neo community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any of these 12 free stocks could be a free Nio share, a free Tesla share, or a mix of all of them. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 4 days. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Looking at Nio, last week I released this video. I think it was like last week or a week and a half ago. All right, I talked about how Wyckoff has these accumulation schematics. If you don't remember what this is, basically institutions bring prices down, they go short, they start to sell certain stocks, and they tend to respect this pattern. So they start buying in these like different patterns. And then when we see this like last spring phase during the phase C point where we start to drop on like maybe like higher volume, we tend to enter those phase D, phase E recovery points later. So institutions, they bring stocks down, they tend to accumulate shares around here, and they finally let these stocks run. This is a pattern that's existed for many, many decades, if not like over a century. And this is a pattern that tends to repeat itself in the markets very, very often. So for Nio, what I did previously was I drew out, and let me actually make this easier to see for you guys. Give me 1 second. So I drew out the different phases in Wyckoff. I'm going to try to make the chart a little bit narrow so it's easier to see. Let me see if I could get this to look right. All right, so just remember these different phases. I'm hoping this isn't too small for you guys either. But anyways, it looks like this, right? We basically had what I kind of like perceived as Neo's preliminary support right here. This was back in January 2022. A nice pop followed by the massive selling climax. And this is what caused Neo to drop down to like 13 bucks as early as March 2022. We got the automatic reaction right here. There's like a pop up here, a big, like a small drop, which would be like the sell test phase, followed by a big push into this resistance level right here, which is the 24 range. This would have been that big pop in phase B of the schematic as volume actually picked up right beforehand. Volume started coming down, we started dropping. This is what tends to happen as we approach a sell test, and I believe that this would have been the phase B point. So considering that this was phase B, we came down to the sell test in phase B. Neo came down pretty hard. And this is when Neo hits that $11.66 support zone. Got a big bounce off that. Then Neo got this nice rally approaching the month of July. Remember this rally? We were talking about this, how Neo got a big bounce. And remember, we could learn something. Neo went from 11 bucks to 24 bucks within 2 months. So this thing could run when the time is right, when the bull market comes over the next couple of months. Neo is going to pop. We already see some real world examples of how this thing could run when the time is right. So in phase B, we started to come down, we continued to drop, and then we came down like this and got a bounce. And I mentioned that, okay, if this was the last point of support, Neo should have started to recover from here. But considering how the market moves, and also historically, if I pull this up right here, the market tends to follow the seasonal pattern. And remember, we have a drop in September, a slight push up in October, followed by a big drop in November, right here. And we're kind of like right here, right now. So, anyways, going back to Wyckoff, we got a small pop in September, which is what tends to happen. Small drop, I'm sorry, a big drop in September to the new low. So then this confirmed that this was not an LPS phase just yet, and we could have been in a spring. And that's why I was theorizing. I'm sure you guys remember this last week. I was telling you we could be entering the spring phase in phase C. This would mean that Nio would make a new low. Notice how the spring phase is lower than the sell test in phase B. I mentioned this, people were not happy to hear that. I understand the frustration, but please note, I love Nio, but I don't just love it because I think it's a great stock. I love it because of the fundamentals, the improvements to the company, the high customer service, the fact that they have a very big vision to improve the world and to help people, make big changes. So it's a great company. I'm very bullish long term, but for the short term, considering the market circumstances, more downside was very imminent. So then what confirmed that I was right about the theory, right? I mentioned the spring test right here, the spring area right here would be lower than the sell test in phase B. So Nio would make a new low for the year. I said that's very possible. What happened? Nio came tumbling down. This thing, it managed to touch the mid $10 range. It looks like it could actually go lower, unfortunately, as the market is starting to take a big hit. And that is what happened. And this does confirm we are in the spring phase. Now, if we are set to follow this whole schematic, this would imply that this is our last big opportunity, guys, to buy Nio at these very, very cheap levels. Because approaching the end of the year, the market's going to start recovering. Nio's going to start pushing up again, have a test phase, push up, enter phase D, maybe around like January, maybe like December to January or February, somewhere during that time frame. Nio's going to start pumping. Nio's going to be back in the 20s, then the 30s, push up back to the 40s sometime next year. All right. And remember, we're talking about a $10 stock that's going to 4x in a short period of time. It's coming soon. And we are, in my opinion, what is the spring phase? The last time Nio is going to drop this low in a very long while before the recovery starts. So we do have more downside. In my previous video, I mentioned something. By previous video, I mean my video from last week. I mentioned that $9.41 is where Nio has this gap. We could see Nio in the nines. And if Nio doesn't hold the nines, if we see this thing come down to the eights, $8 flat, if not like 7.9, that would be the final bottom. I used a Fibonacci retracement chart to essentially calculate where the golden pocket is. This is a pivotal retracement level where stocks tend to bounce. The 0.786, sorry, not 0.786, the 0.618 to 0.65 retracement level is around $8. It doesn't have to come like this low, but it is possible to see Nio enter the $9 to $8 range very soon. That would be the spring. So one last major drop, guys, before this thing gets ready to explode. Now, when is it going to explode? Possibly by like mid-November, approaching December. I think we're going to get a nice bounce. We're going to start pushing up again, see our test phase. By the time we get to like January, February, guys, this thing is going to rocket, in my opinion. This is what Wyckoff, let me find it. This is what Wyckoff is suggesting for Nio. Now, these phases can be compressed and kind of like pushed out. So it may take a little bit longer for Nio to get the big bounce. Maybe phase D could take a couple of months. But the bottom line is, so far we've followed this to a T, and there will be some pain short term, but for the long term, the future is still very bright. All right, guys? So I'm not trying to be, bragging about anything I said, but the truth is the truth. All right? Nio could come down, in my opinion, to the nines. If $9 does not hold, then we're entering like stronger support over and over again. If $9 doesn't hold us, this thing has the potential to come down to fill this gap down here in the eights. We could see Nio in the eights, and that will be very close to the bottom. The absolute bottom may be like the $7 range, $7.87 to $7 flat. Really depends on the market. So just think about this, guys. Just think for a second. Let's say Nio comes down to $8 or even like $7. You start buying a ton of shares. You buy like 1,000 shares for that much money. Those 1,000 shares, of Nio costing you like $7,000 or $8,000 within a year, when this thing enters the SOS phase into phase E, this is likely going to come within a year. That $7,000 could easily, in my opinion, come back to the 30s. The $7 level can hit the 30s, the 40s. You could enter this zone pretty quickly sometime next year. Very possible. Which means it has the potential to 5-6x within a year. Like, that's crazy. That's a crazy return for the markets. That's like buying 1,000 shares for $7,000. If that's 6x's, that's like 42,000 you can make just from that many shares alone. And if it 8x's, like 56,000 from that money, that's insane, guys. So anyways, I'm not trying to like give you financial advice or prove that that is guaranteed to happen, but it has the potential to do that. And if anything, I am confident it's going to come back to this $20 range pretty quickly. I'm very confident it will once we get a big bounce, once we find our bottom. It may take a couple of months, but these months will just fly by, guys. They happen so fast. Time flies. So huge opportunities are coming. And remember, I'm just talking about the next couple of months. What about the next few years when this thing goes, in my opinion, to the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 100s, 200, 1,000? Just think about that. Think about the growth in this stock, in this company, the potential it has, and why on earth I see this as such a huge opportunity to build generational wealth. Thank you all for listening. Non financial advice, by the way. Have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Neo to the moon, because the long term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.